Hi guys, and welcome to this week's lyrical breakdown with me, your lady friend, Bonnie. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing well. Spring is on its way. Looking forward to it. So this week I am breaking down one of your requests that has come across from leaving comments down below. Actually, this one wasn't left in a lyrical breakdown comment or lyrical breakdown video. It was left in Classic Quest. And this comes to us from Dusty Clips. So thank you for your suggestion and for always shouting it out. I always appreciate it. I can just read the actual thing. It just says, great idea for Bonnie, DJ Quik, Jus Lyke Compton lyrical breakdown. And that, Dusty, is exactly what I am doing. I told him that I was actually a pretty big fan of, pretty big fan. I mean, I really just discovered him a few months ago or a year ago or something, DJ Quik. And so when somebody suggested him, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll take him up on that. I'll give it a whirl because honestly, I listened to a few of DJ Quik's songs, just randomly. I don't even know how I discovered him. But I've liked everything I've heard. And so I was happy to oblige 100%. So, I'm really thankful. And, if you guys have any suggestions for other songs that you want me to break down, or if there's a good story that you want me to figure out or piece together from a song, or something that would be a good challenge for me, definitely leave those in the comments down below. I'll always check them out, and you may see your suggestion being done one day. I'm not an expert or anything. I'm not a hip hop scholar. I'm just telling you what I think, and I'm just breaking down the lyrics as best as I can understand in today's day, because some of them, recently I've been doing more recent ones, I guess, but I haven't, so sometimes when you go back in time a little bit, you're not always sure of what was going on at the times, and there's a lot more research involved. So this one comes off of his album Way Too Funky, which came out May 29th, 1992, so it is an oldie but a goodie. So I'm excited to do this. Let's get into it. Let's have a little bit of a listen. I'm not going to play the whole song. You guys, if you have been around here long enough, you already know that. So let's listen to a little clip and I'll start the show.
In the store, he put me down with a herringbone and shoes galore. That's when I started thinking that this one.
So it definitely sounds cool. It's very West Coast. It's very funky, kind of has that grimy sort of feeling to it, but it's still smooth and enjoyable to listen to. I really I think most of his stuff, maybe some of his albums are just terrible. I have no idea. But for the most part, like I said, everything I thought was pretty good that he's done that I have discovered. So let's get into the first verse. So finally out of the motherfucking CPT, off to other cities and shit, no longer just an underground hit, moving things, a local blank made good. I made a name off of making tapes for blanks in the hood, and now let me tell you a story about the places that I've been to and the shit that I've been through, like fighting and shootouts and banging and shit, all because a blank made a hit. Check it. In 1991, it was double or nothing, not a blank with a hit. Then we broke out with the funky shit about bitches and blanks and getting drunk off the bud. I was doing the shit they hadn't heard of. So that's kind of the first little bit. So he's basically saying this is his first step out of Compton and what he's seen. And if you don't know where Compton is, it's a neighborhood in LA. Prominently, I'm going to say a low income area where lots of notable rappers have come from, and I think that's kind of cool, especially and it's still it was happening in 1992, and it's still happening today. So I think that's really cool. That there's such a localized thing that they support, and I think that's really neat. There's all these rappers that come from this one neighborhood, and I think that's really cool. So he's traveling around, and because he's kind of made it, he's blown up a little bit. He's became a bit more famous. He's not just doing his own thing anymore. People want to see him, and so he has the opportunity to travel. And he's obviously making moves, and he's pretty proud that he can rep his hood, his neighborhood, as he travels around, and I think that's kind of cool. He talks about that he did a lot of mixing and like tapes and different things for maybe like local Compton rappers or other rappers in like the hood. And, you know, that's kind of how he got his name out, by kind of working with people maybe who were blowing up also at the same time as him or had already blown up. And I think that was kind of a smart move on his half. And now, you know, that we know so much about him, he's kind of letting us he's going to tell us a story about like what he's been through and what he's seen, what happened. And, you know, he talks about that he's gotten into fights and he's, you know, he's been shot at and, you know, maybe like the sex that he's had. And he has all of these stories because he's obviously become successful in his music career. And then I think some of his friends were putting out music like their life depended on it. Last year, it's kind of what he was saying here. And now here they are, like they've done it. They worked so hard. They hustled and they did everything that they could so that they could make it, and they did. And I think that that's a really great success story. You know, it's always good to hear like that kind of thing. Like if you're focused and you're determined and you have a goal, then you can get there. And they obviously decided to make some more like funky beats and, you know, with stories of things which he knows, you know, guys and gals getting up to no good in the hood, drinking, smoking weed, which apparently was like, I guess like a new thing to talk about. And I suppose it is, but I mean, there was still the 60s. There was still like White Rabbit and like other weird songs from like the 60s where people were definitely talking about drugs. And like the Beatles, like a whole bunch of like the Beatles songs are like, you know, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Like there's a lot of like Beatles drug reference songs that, you know, that they're like, oh no, it wasn't really, but I think it is. I mean, I guess there's not that many people at this time in 1992 that are publicly, openly talking about smoking weed and doing whatever. I don't know. But yeah, so that's what they're doing. They're just having fun. They're young guys, right? So they're smoking, they're drinking, they're doing whatever they want. And there's also jingle bells that are kind of included in like the sound of the song, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I mean, you can have bells anytime, but it definitely sounds like jingle bells, like Christmas bells. But I think it's really just an instrument. You can use bells whenever you want. So all that to say, I will just keep going on now. But foolish was I to think that it wasn't no other cities like this. And they didn't like this, that Compton was the home of a foot in your ass, where you got blast, and now that was just a thing of the past. Let me tell you why firsthand. We did a show up in Oakland, and Blanks was kicking up sand. To them, banging ain't nothing new, and slanging ain't nothing new. And for every blank we done shot, they done shot too. Straight doing locks since the 60s before I was born. Families and young blanks mourn. So I'm just letting you know that if you plan to take a trip to the Bay, keep your hand on your clip. So he thought that, I think, like the hood and like the violence and like all of like that shit was like exclusive to Compton. But and you know, in this case, he's traveling around, he's starting off his tour, and at this time he's not really too far from home at all. He's talking about being in Oakland, which is also another neighborhood in California. I think he's kind of surprised to see that like his kind of lifestyle and like the rowdy, troublesome, violent thing that he sees in Compton all the time, that it's the same thing that's happening everywhere else and all these gangs and whatever. So I think that he's kind of chatting with them and realizing that in some cases that they're in these other neighborhoods, they're even harder than him and his friends. They're even more dangerous. They're even more like criminally involved. You know, and they're kind of saying like, well, there's, you know, both places have unfortunate killings, which is not good. But he's also saying like, hey, like, don't think that just because you're out of Compton that the danger is gone. Because, you know, like he's kind of saying like, if you are still like driving around and you're in Oakland or you're wherever, still, you know, have your weapon on you, be prepared. Like things can happen, not just here, but like they can happen everywhere else as well. Or at least in Oakland, he's talking about. And then we have Sort of like the hook, I guess. So because Oakland, ha ha ha, is just like Compton. Yeah, I'm telling y'all, Oakland, ha ha ha, is just like Compton, fool. So he's realizing that Oakland is quite a lot like Compton. Which is kind of nice, I guess, if you're like traveling around and maybe it's like your first time and maybe you're a little homesick and you're like, oh, I wish I was home right now. And you could still have like all that gang violence right at your disposal, even in Oakland. Um, oh, the 90s. Not that now was much better, but let's go into verse 2. So moving on to St. Louis, or St. Louis, I can't remember how he says it. It's one of the two. Where they country as fuck, with gold teeth in their mouth, but they still know what's up. Where it's a hot as a motherfucker, hot enough to make you cuss. That's why I kept my ass on the bus. But later on, when it cooled off, we came down and met a couple of friends who put us up on the St. Louis Cap, the Smith Center, with Big Bob, Little Steve, Tojo, Biss, and Rich, and a couple of bitches. So, so it's St. Louis, Missouri? St. Louis, Missouri? I think it's St. Louis. St. Louis. That sounds like a lot better, if I'm not mistaken. And they are like rural country type people, I imagine, and it's basically where I grew up. I don't know anything about St. Louis, but I definitely grew up where it was also country as fuck. So I can relate to a lot of the things that they're talking about here. And he's kind of saying like, even though they look a little bit different and act a little bit different, they're still gangster as fuck. And I think that that's kind of like an interesting thing, like, wherever you go. And it's very hot, and I think that that's kind of like where like the arid types, desertous kind of states start. I think it kind of starts near Missouri, and like there's like Arizona and Nevada and like all that's like quite hot and dry. So I think that that's kind of where that is. And I guess he was like, I'm not leaving, like I'm not getting out. Like, so he just stayed in like what I would assume is the air-conditioned bus. Air-conditioned tour bus is where he was relaxing. He wasn't leaving. But then maybe like in the evenings when like, the sun went down and it wasn't so hot. So he has some friends there, and so they hooked him up with like some like cool places to hang out and with some cool people. And they arranged to get some ladies involved, I guess. So yeah. Let's see what else happens. Then they took us to a man named Gus in a store. He put us down with a herringbone and shoes galore. That's when I started thinking that this wasn't like home. But then they had to prove me wrong, because later that night, after we did the show, we went back to the after set, and wouldn't you know, yeah, Bloods and Crips started scrapping and shooting in Missouri? Damn, how could that happen? How could this happen? So they go to meet this guy Gus at the store, and he gives like Quik like such wonderful customer service, and he's like, wow, people treat people like me. I think he's obviously talking about himself like so much better. Like, this is so great, and it's like so nice that like I'm being like waited on hand and foot, literally foot, because he is buying shoes. So he's like, wow, like this place is great. And then obviously, his opinion changes after he sees like the evening's events, and he's performing, he's doing a show, he's obviously on tour there for a reason. And then there's like this gang fight that breaks up between the Crips and the Bloods, and it's just like, what? Like he can't even believe it, and he's just like, here? Really? No way. Basically, like he's saying like it's, and I think that you probably, I mean, I would assume so. I probably, when you think of like certain areas, you're like, oh, like that area is dangerous. There's, gangs and whatever. But you wouldn't always think of like some other places, kind of like St. Louis, Missouri, a place I don't really know very much about. But is that the Twin City? Twin, I think it is. There's something. There's like the Arch, or there's something. But I think that's, I would never be like, that's a dangerous area. Like, I wouldn't think that necessarily. So it's good to kind of like see that people are, I don't know if it's good, but it goes to show that people are really just the same no matter where you go. So then we have like the hook, and now St. Louis, ha ha ha, is just like Compton. Yeah, y'all, St. Louis is just like Compton. So yeah, I mean, he's realizing that St. Louis is gangster just like Compton. So verse 3, I feel like you guys kind of get the gist of what this whole song's about. Uh, so I don't think they know they too crazy for their own good. They need to stop watching that Colors and Boys in the Hood. Too busy claiming 60s, trying to be raw and never ever seeing the Shaw. But now back to the story that I'm telling. We packed up the tour bus one more time and started bailing. When we arrived, I saw the red and blue sweatsuits. When I'm thinking about horse dookie and cowboy boots. Where do you think he ended up? So he's basically kind of saying like all these people are influenced by like to be in like these gangs because of like hood movies and gang movies that were becoming very popular in like the 90s, especially like the early 90s. You know, he named 2 movies. And basically like when all this shit started and just kind of became more exposed and more like pop culture-y a little bit, and like white people were getting involved and other people were getting involved, and like a lot of people I think were just doing it to be cool, to be like the movies, to kind of have that like cool life. But it's I think a lot harder than I think the reality of it is it's not as easy and whatever. I mean, not that the movies make it look easy, but I mean, you know what I mean, I think. Anyways, so they obviously just wanted to like have that kind of like cool lifestyle that seemed cool, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it is still something that you would get stuck in. Anyways, so Shaw is apparently Crenshaw, which was where the Crips hang out, according to like somebody on Genius. Like, I don't really know anything about that, so I had to look that up. And I think it's also like an easier way to get people involved in like the hood as well. I think these movies and stuff kind of I think they made it easier for like the people to like try to recruit new members in and be like, oh, you want to be like the movies, that's really cool, like that's, you know, you could be tough like them, you know, if you wanted to. So I think that's maybe something. Anyways, so like back to where he's going, back to where he, you know, he says he wants to keep going. He's telling like the story, and he gets back on the road, and he finds himself in a place that is rural. Again, it's country. There's a lot of cowboys, and yeah, well, let's find out where he goes. So I guess Texas ain't no different from the rest, and San Antonio was just waiting to put up the test. And before it was over, the shit got deep. A blank got shot in the face and was dead in the street. Then they came in the club thinking of scrapping. Little did they know that we was packing. Yeah, we putting him down and scaring the rest. Shit, I even had to wear the bulletproof vest. So, he's in Texas. He's specifically San Antonio, Texas. And then there's some other gangster shit that's happening. And somebody gets like shot in the face in the streets, like, you know, cold blood. And because of this, like, this obviously escalates. So there's people that are pissed off and like wanting revenge or whatever. And so they start like this brawl, they start this fight, and they end up in the club that he's performing in, or wherever he is. And he's like, nope. And and so like him and like his crew, they all like have guns. They're like, hey, like we have guns too, like, you know, don't try anything. And because of like all this like violence and escalation of like, all this gang stuff that was going on, and like he's there, you know, he's doing like a tour, right? So he's not going to be in like these cities for like a long period of time necessarily. And so like, he's seeing like all these violent like acts and like the trouble and like the gang life and like whatever else that's going on in just like such a short period of time. So it's interesting to see like how quickly these things happen and spread, and that they just keep happening over and over again. And so because of all of this violence, he has to resort to wearing a bulletproof vest, which I guess he is carrying. I guess that's a smart thing to have on you. If you carry a gun, you should maybe also consider buying I don't know if that's legal or not, buying a bulletproof vest. So obviously then we have like the little course, now San Antonio, ha ha ha, is just like Compton. Yeah, San Antonio, ha ha ha, is just like Compton, bitch. Again, realizing that they're not that unique, that Compton isn't like exclusive to like the hard gang life, that this stuff is everywhere. Wherever there are people, there is always going to be good and bad. So verse 4, after about a month on the road, we came home, and I can safely say that LA is a much better place to stay. How could a bunch of blanks in a town like this have such a big influence on blanks so far away? But my story ain't over, because I got one more to tell, and all the people of Colorado, they know it well. And it was all in the news, and if you don't remember, I had this show I did in Denver. So he's been traveling across the country for about a month at this point, and he still loves LA the best. Like, it's his home. He's like, well, nothing compares to Compton. And he's like, well, we did it first, and we influenced everybody to be like this and to be like us. And I think that that's, again, like part of the experience of travel. Like when you leave your little bubble, like, and you go outside to like a different place that you've never visited before, whether it's just like a city over, like he talks about how he went from like Compton to Oakland, or like how if he went across the country, basically he's traveling all over the place and he's seeing his own country. And I think that that's, a great thing to do. So I think that what it is that he's seeing that people are the same everywhere, that there's the same shit everywhere, that people are suffering, and that there's pain and drugs and alcohol and guns and violence and gangs and everything else that happens everywhere. Like I said, wherever there's good, there's bad. And so, especially like when like the bad is kind of neglected and just left to grow and become angry and to just be like, hey, like nobody's listening to us. Like if this is the only thing that's going to get us attention, then we'll do it. Like bad attention is still attention. And I think that that's still something that, people don't always look at. They just think, oh, these gangs are bad. But you have to look at the backstory. Why are these gangs existing? How did they end up existing? Why, like, what is their purpose? Why are all these people angry and hateful of everybody? Why do people want to kill other people? Their friends, their family, their enemies. It doesn't matter who it is. That it's just interesting to that, obviously these things happen, and this is happening everywhere, and this is like a constant. And especially like, this is early 90s. This is when like there was a lot of like, well, police violence. Obviously there was still a lot. That's where it kind of it was like the riots in LA and everything, and the crack epidemic and like the gangs and everything. Like it really was kind of like the prime time, like when everything was like first blowing up, and like when there was like real shit that was happening, I think, like kind of across the country. So yeah, anyways, so now he ends up in Denver, Colorado. For anybody that cares, that's basically where South Park is, if you're interested in that. So let's keep going. With a punk-ass promoter in a bunk-ass skating rink, bitches was loving it, but blanks was shoving and shit to the front of the stage to throw their gang signs, but I'm getting paid, so I didn't pay it no mind. Then I poured out my brew onto their face and chest, and then they started throwing soda and fucking up my guests. When it was over, 2 blanks needed stitches, got cracked in the jaw for being punk ass bitches. So he's doing a show there, and because it's a cold, mountainous place, I guess that there's a lot of like people go there to ski and skate and like, winter activities. So I guess that's kind of like where he's at. And, he's talking about like all these people, the ladies love him at the show, but there's these violent kind of gang type guys that are also there. And they come up and they push and shove like all their way to the front so that they can be at the front of the stage and like kind of maybe rile him up or like, do whatever. In this case, they're showing their gang signs. They're saying like, hey, like you came to like our hood, like this is our hood, like like they have to like represent like their territory. And so he's just like, I'm just trying to do my show. That's it. But he gets I guess obviously like they were doing something more to provoke him, and so he ends up like dumping his drink on them, and then they obviously start throwing their drinks and throwing everything at him and his crew. And I'm guessing that maybe when he talks about, he makes a reference to his Guess. Guess is really popular in like the 90s. I don't know what, like, where like the trend stopped being cool, because I feel like it's a relatively cheap store. I mean, to be fair, I haven't been in like a Guess, maybe I've been in like a Guess store twice in my life. It's definitely like, I mean, it's okay. There's clothes. I don't. I think it's like the same thing. It's, it's like $50 or something. It's not like too expensive, but I don't think it's. I mean, maybe it was more expensive back in the 90s. I don't know. But yeah, there's been several rappers that have made reference to Guess clothing, so I don't really know like how. I'm gonna have to look that up. How did Guess influence rappers? So I just thought it was maybe like a watch or something like that got broke and or got damaged somehow in like the tussle and like this fighting that's going on. And if it did cost, a fair amount of money, then he's obviously going to be pissed off that it's broken. So obviously he's basically saying like when it was done, people were injured. And I think that they were injured by him and like his crew. And then he kind of says like, well, they were just acting like stupid fools, basically, like, and they were happy to beat them up, I guess, because don't show your gang signs to people in a gang. I don't know. That's just me. So, yeah, and then we have the last little hook again. Now Denver, ha ha ha, is just like Compton. Yeah, y'all, Denver, ha ha ha. They want to be just like Compton, bitch. And you know that Oakland, ha ha ha, is just like Compton. Yeah, y'all, St. Louis, ha ha ha. We made it just like Compton, fool. San Antonio, ha ha ha. It's just like Compton. Yeah, and Denver, ha ha ha. They want to be like Compton, punk ass blanks. I thought you knew, ha ha. Yeah. And basically everywhere he goes, people are wanting to be just like Compton, and he's like, nobody can be like Compton. I'm the OG. Like, I know what's up. I'm from there. I'm from Compton. Like, I'm representing. Like, he's kind of saying that. And he's like, all these people are just copying us. Like, we're the best. We're the original. And, yeah, I think that he's just interesting. I think it's just interesting to hear that he just traveled around, in his country, and and you can travel anywhere really, and you can see that people are still arguing, still having the same issues. They are still fighting over the same stuff, same shit as everybody else. It's incredible how not different the world is when you get out there and explore. Like, of course there are like really great things to see in the world and to see in your country and to see wherever you go in the next town over if you've never visited. Like, there's always something to see and do, but people are the same everywhere. They all have the same feelings. They go through the same situations. It could be like a different background, different environment or whatever, but there's still people. They still are going to argue. They're still going to be happy. They're still going to be sad. They're still going to be love. There's still going to be hate. So as long as that happens, as long as people have emotions, and that's pretty much it. They're going to be acting crazy everywhere, basically. I think that's pretty much it. That's kind of what he's saying, that like, all these people are the same, no matter where you go. So I don't really know if Compton was like the very first place to start violence, because I'm pretty sure there was violence always. But I mean, maybe somehow or another, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, they definitely blew up and became just like Compton. So, and Compton still has that like kind of reputation. It's the same sort of thing as Brooklyn. Although Brooklyn, like when I think of Brooklyn, I still have like the image of like the 90s Brooklyn in my mind. And then when I go to Brooklyn, like, I mean, I've been to Brooklyn. It's not, I mean, there's still some of that there, but it's not quite the same as it once was. I don't really know what Compton's like. I haven't been to Compton. But when I was in LA about 10 years ago, it was pretty dangerous and scrappy. Like, I definitely saw some like crazy shit happening there. So, I mean, I think that was in like downtown LA, which I guess is like, I don't know the area all that well, but yeah, traveling around, I realized people are the same no matter where you go. So that's pretty much it for me, guys. I know this one wasn't like the most deep, but I was really like happy to like do this for for Dusty Clips, and for myself, really. I just wanted to listen to like a DJ Quik song, and I think that's really cool. And if you have never listened to a DJ Quik song, go listen to some of his stuff and let me know if you also like it, or if you're like, it's not really my thing. But yeah, I think that we should definitely do an album at some point. Hopefully some point soon. But I mean, I say that, but there's so very many albums to do. But yeah, one day we'll get there. But I definitely want to make sure this gets done. But anyways, that's enough. I feel like I'm just rambling away. So if you guys have any suggestions of songs that you want to see me break down in the near future, leave those down below. And I would like to thank our patrons for supporting us as usual. So Linda Williams, Super Old School in 1994, Chris Prado, Ismail Gadamsi, and Carl J. So thank you guys so much. If you guys have any interest in joining the Patreon, you can find all the information down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. And yeah, I mean, I will see you guys next week. So have a great one. Bye!